Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our webinar. We are going to give just a few moments for people to file on in and settle in, and then we'll go ahead and get started. And while we're waiting for a few seconds here, if you would like, please feel free to share where you're visiting us from. We'd love to hear in the chat where everyone's coming from today. A lot of North Carolina representation here today. That's great to see. Well, it's about a minute after the hour, so I'll go ahead and jump on in because I know we have a pretty packed agenda here today. So, welcome everyone to our webinar on how AI virtual assistants and human support increase academic success and engagement at HBCUs. My name is Melvin Hines, and I'm the co-founder and CEO of Upswing. We started Upswing back in 2013, and the whole reason for wanting to create a service like Upswing was that we wanted to have the opportunity to be able to support students who aren't always the ones who tend to get the most amount of shine, if you will, when it comes to supports and resources. Growing up in my hometown, I know that was something that I tended to struggle with, and I tended to see that a lot of my fellow classmates were struggling as well, and ultimately that led me down this path of passion of wanting to be part of the solution that I know so many of you all are here to be able to do today as well. And so as a result, uh, we've been fortunate to be able to create some of these types of webinars and resources and tools for everyone else so that we can have this type of discussion. And I love to have discussions that are back and forth, and that encourage a lot of the thoughts and ideas that are here as well. And so I'm really happy to also have Amy Anderson and Erica Bradford here as well, who I'll be introducing in a moment. Before we get to there, just wanted to share a little bit more about what we do here at Upswing. We're certainly proud of our HBCU partners and student success. Here are a few of them here as well. And our team is a team that makes sure that we want to be able to reflect some of the challenges of our users as well. And so you can see some of the statistics that we're keeping track of internally. And we want to make sure that as we're creating tools and support resources that we're supporting them as well. And that's a big part of why we wanted to put together today's webinar, focusing on specifically one of our tools and how we've seen some of the needs come out from there, but also how we wanted to be able to help support under-resourced organizations and teams and departments be able to also create some of that same level of support as well. So let's talk about some of the changing faces of today's students. I shared this previously in our HBCU webinar back in October. But this is a study that I really love to talk about, not just publicly, but internally as well, because it really, I think, grounds us a lot in just some of the ways in which students have evolved and changed over the years. We talked a little bit about the demographics of some of the students that Upswing works with. We're also noticing that's the demographics of students increasingly today as well. I'm sure this is something that is very familiar to everyone who's on the call. That today, over a third of all students are over the age of 25. Nearly half are first generation. Two-thirds are working at least part time, and quite a few are also balancing both being a student as well as being a parent. And so, with all of these different challenges, the types of needs that they're looking for are also changing as well. And we've certainly seen that within our HBCU communities. Here's just a quick stat on uh, the percentage of students who are student parents who are in college that are Black are 33%, first generation 18%, adult learners 21%, and working while in school 9%. And so what we know is that as we're thinking about how can we make sure to support them, it doesn't always look like 9 to 5 support. We have to kind of think about ways in which we can help to support them beyond that as well. And what I really liked about this study in particular were that it touched on some of the key aspects that many students tend to raise their hands and say that they're struggling with and needing. Things like understanding the administrative process of higher ed, housing insecurity, needing support for childcare, food insecurity, lack of sense of belonging, balancing both work and academic workloads. These are just some of the things that we know that today's students are having to navigate. And that's a big part of why I think we've started to see more types of tools and diversity of tools to support these students. Um, but the question becomes, how do we make sure that we're not just supporting them with the technology, but also how are we making sure that we're being there to provide that personal level of support as well? Um, we know this is important because uh, today's students are increasingly reaching for their phones, increasingly reaching for technology to be that first line of communication for some of the things that they're challenged with. As you can see here, over half of students in a recent research study, said that they use AI most commonly for information and brainstorming, and that Black and Latino students were significantly more likely to use these tools. But we also know that over dependence on these tools can create challenges as well. There's potential biases that can take place. There are certain inherent cultural differences that need to be addressed when we're talking about those tools as well. And so the question becomes, how do we increase the efficiency um, or the benefits of the efficiency of these AI tools while also ensuring that we're supporting the students as effectively as possible? What I wanted to do was share just really quickly some of the things that we've learned through our virtual assistant Anna as part of our wraparound services platform. Just for those of you all who don't know, we use an AI assistant named Anna that also is combined with human support to make sure that we're proactively reaching out to students, asking them about their needs, understanding their challenges, and if they become complex, making sure that we're referring them to the right resource at the right time. And so because we're able to pull that data, we've been able to also share what are some of the needs and supports that specifically students at HBCUs have requested from us. And so here's an example of one of those messages that we've sent out. Basically, about halfway through the semester, we'll say something like, you're halfway through the semester. I'm so proud of you. Don't forget, you never have to do it alone. How are you feeling about the rest of the semester? And students can say how they're feeling, and it becomes part of the data that we're able to see, and it allows us to then be able to step in as human support to talk to the 55% of students who are saying that they could use some help. And here's a breakdown of some of the things that they're saying that they're needing help with. The most common is typically different types of personal development resources. So things like time management, study skills. A lot of times students just want to know where to go to find a specific tool that they need help with. School resources is also right there, as you can see, just short of personal development. Tutoring, of course, since that's something that we tend to work with a lot, but also advising comes up a pretty good bit as well. A lot of times they will say advising, but it could also mean mental health support or mentoring support, and that tends to come up a lot as well. And so these are just some of the things that we've seen on our side. Um, what we've also noticed specifically with regards to our HBCU students was that when it came to needs that were critical, they were 24% more likely to indicate need for a place to sleep for the night, having housing insecurity. 41% more likely to indicate a dropout risk, and 50% more likely to indicate self-harm. And so these are things that we want to make sure that we're able to be right there and responsive with students as quickly as possible as well. But when you have thousands of students and maybe a handful of people to really be able to support them in a live fashion. The question is, how can we make sure that we're always there right at the right time to create that support? And that's where leveraging both technology and human support can be really supportive for students as well. Um, we really start to see this data as we take a look at things like Gallup and Lumina study, which showed that uh, showing here on the left-hand side, the students that were most likely to consider dropping out of school. And then when they mentioned the top 3 reasons, that first one there, right? Emotional distress, challenges of life, challenges of balancing so many different responsibilities all at the same time, mental health, and then tuition costs and expenses that are associated with those things as well. And so again, trying to make sure that we can help to support them as closely as we can becomes really important. And that's a big part of the reason why things like student escalations can become so important. Um, John Smell, Associate Provost at UNC Charlotte, mentioned that there's great efficacy to having good data, but the data isn't what retains students. It's what we do with our data and how we communicate to students based on that data that really makes a true difference here. And so that's that now what is a big part of what we want to make sure is happening as well when we're supporting our institutions with a tool like Anna, but also supporting them with the data that we're gathering from Anna as well. Um, and so what I wanted to do here was take us next to our panel discussion to share about some of the other ways in which we're also noticing that schools are balancing both that technology front, right, to support these thousands and thousands of students who are coming in every year and needing help with limited time on their hands, limited resources on their hands, and having to do, yeoman's work while while also balancing so many other administrative duties as well. And so, before turning it over to them with a few of the questions, I wanted to first introduce you to our panel. The first person is Amy Anderson. She's the director of tutoring and early alerts at North Carolina A&T State University. Um, Amy is a dedicated higher education professional with over 22 years of experience. She's passionate and about increasing access and equity among underrepresented populations. She has experience in student affairs, diversity, equity, and inclusion, and academic affairs. Currently, she serves as the director of tutoring and early alert programs at NCA&T, where she provides academic support to students through a myriad of interventions and high impact practices. So, thank you, Amy, for joining our panel today.
Thank you for having me.
For sure, for sure. And next, I wanted to introduce you all to Erica Bradford. She is the executive director of the Learning Center and Testing Services at Fayetteville State University in Fayetteville, North Carolina. In this role, she oversees the Writing Center, the Math Center, supplemental instruction, academic coaching, uh, Bronco Star, supporting students with learning variabilities, and online tutoring. With 14 years of experience in higher ed, she has led initiatives to enhance academic support services, improve student retention, and foster an inclusive learning environment. She is passionate about developing strategies to enhance student success. So, welcome, Erica. So nice to have you as well.
Awesome. Hi, Melvin. It's great to be here this afternoon.
Great to have you. Um, I'll kick it off with my first question for both of you all. Um, how long have you been working in education overall to provide student supports to students at various HBCUs? I'll start with Amy.
Thank you. I have been working with HBCU specifically for 13 years. Now, I've been in higher education 22, but the first half of that was at predominantly white institutions. But even within those institutions, I was working with culturally underrepresented students and multicultural students, but specifically at HBCUs the past 13 years. And all that time has been at A&T.
Great, great. And how about you, Erica?
I have been here at Fayetteville State University for 14 years, and all of it has been in the capacity of academic support for students. So I started off as like a counselor and became a director for a STEM program So we were our main focus was on students that were in STEM disciplines. And then I spent some time in the McNair program, working with students who, desire to earn a PhD. And then in the last 3 years, I've been serving as the director for the Learning Center here. So each time it just gave me a different perspective of different groups around the campus. So, but it's all been in academic affairs.
Okay, gotcha, gotcha. Well, that's definitely a wealth of experience, and I think that really leads well into the next question. Over that period of time, have you noticed any changes or additional supports from your students and what they're seeking? And if so, what are some of those, and how do you think that that's changed over the years?
I'll start. I think it's changed drastically. I think, especially since COVID. But when I started here in 2012, I think we had a different type of student, a student that was much more engaged, maybe in person engagement. Let me say that
Mm,
engaged in person. Students, the main struggle was maybe just math per se, or a STEM focused type of course. And I've seen that kind of evolve and change, especially with COVID, to be quite honest, because we started with Anna back in 2021, right at the top of COVID, because we wanted a way to reach out to students and hear about what was going on with them, because we couldn't reach out to them because of what was going on. They were at home, we were remote learning. And then, but now that we've come back and we're back in person, some of those behaviors and things have carried over because students got used to online learning. They got used to communicating more via Zoom, via technology, things like that. So, for instance, I also am an advisor and I also teach in the classroom as well. So, a lot of my students, as opposed to just stopping by my office like they used to, they want to meet with me on Zoom. They would prefer that
mm,
more than anything. They still like a human touch, which is why I'm glad the title of the session is both AI support with human support. But they would rather not necessarily come in my office, but reach out virtually. I've noticed since COVID and expansion, since I do work with tutoring, and I don't know if Erica's noticed this, from just some of my main courses of help being STEM, chemistry, bio, math, to expanding into English and history. Um, and I don't know if that has to do with our rise in dependence on technology. Students are used to reading 140 characters or very short excerpts. And then you come to college and you're given 5 classes and you might have to read 2 to 3 chapters per class over the course of the week. So, how do you transition into
mm,
that? So, that's some of the things that I've noticed. And just even with how the students interact with one another, I mentioned I teach in the classroom, I teach freshman studies, and one of the assignments that we have is sort of goal planning for the next year. And inevitably, I've seen an increase on that assignment, which what is one of the goals that you want to address? And making friends is coming up more and more and
interesting.
more. Students are
Mm.
struggling to connect, they're struggling to make friends. They sit next to um, the same people in a classroom for 16 weeks and then they don't know their name at the end of the class period. So seeing that them connect with one another is one some of the things I've noticed in the past few years.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Erica, were you about to jump in? You can jump in
I,
as well.
I'm sorry, Melvin. I'm loving this. Are are like spot on. It's those are the exact same things that we're seeing over here at Fayetteville State. And as like you, I also teach freshman seminar. And so a lot of those things that you mentioned in the classroom, for sure, especially with communication, students, just a simple email, they're lacking the skills in knowing how to properly do things like that. And I do believe that a lot of it is attributed to COVID, especially the ones that are coming in now are they're the ones that just, I mean, I don't know, they just kind of grew up in COVID. They were experiencing a lot of their normal transitions during that time. So
Yeah.
we are receiving a lot of that and having to help them navigate through all of these pieces, and it's a lot. So most of the things that we are seeing, a lot of students needing a lot of emotional and social support.
Mm.
Um, they are really struggling. I mean, I can't say it any better than Amy said, because it's the exact same thing. They're just struggling with those basic things, but they're in an environment where those things are expected, but they don't know how to navigate it.
Mm.
So it's a very interesting time for them. And then also the instant gratification. So they want to be able to use something and get it right now. And they're lacking that the motivation to push through and process, that it's okay. It's supposed to take a little time. No,
Yeah.
that doesn't work for them. They don't want it to take any time. No, they want it right now. And they're used to picking up the phone and getting an answer immediately. And so if it takes more than 5 minutes, if you have to think through a problem, they are, not as willing to go through some of those things. So
That's really interesting. I'm glad you both teased that out. So you both have been in this field for quite a few years and have seen this transition take place over the course of the last 3 or 4 years. Uh, how has that changed what your day-to-day work tends to look like? Because it sounds to me you probably felt like, okay, we're in a groove. We know what's going to take place each year that new students are coming in. This is my expectation in terms of what the students are going to have brought in with them into this new university for them. And then all of a sudden, you're put in this place where you're seeing all these new challenges, um, and you're recognizing that you have to build some of the fundamental blocks up before you can actually get to what you used to be able to do. So, how has that changed what your day-to-day work tends to look like?
I'll start. I was actually just having this conversation with a coworker the other day, because in regards to tutoring, more as opposed to group sessions, more individualized sessions, they're interested in that. They don't necessarily want to share their time with
Mm,
somebody. So I've noticed that. Erica hit the nail right on the head when she talked about having to suss out some of the basics from an email to a phone call. A lot of students are really gun shy about even picking up the phone to talk to somebody they don't know. And so I'm also an advisor. And so when I'm telling a student, go talk to your professor, you're struggling, yes, let's connect you with the tutor, but let's get you connected with the professor so that you can kind of get some more insight on what's going on in the classroom. They're scared. I don't want to talk to him or her. I don't know them. So then we're having a conversation on how do you talk to somebody that you don't know, how to talk to an adult, we even have an assignment in our freshman studies class, how to write a professional email, as opposed to I've gotten emails that are, hey, what's good? Can I come by your office? I have to write back. Now listen, now I'm not your friend. I'm your advisor, so let's figure out how to write a professional email. So even just some of those basics, because like you said, they've been so in the virtual environment on technology that it's like you're almost having to go back to the beginning and teach them things like that. Even teaching them what a college environment is supposed to be, what it's supposed to look like. I remember when I was coming up, we had that class out of high school, kind of prepping you for college. What were some expectations? Usually the high school football coach taught it, but they taught you like what are you supposed to expect in college, and they have not had that. And so even though they have been even on, and I don't know if you've noticed this, Erica, even though they've been on Zoom and on their phone, and they're coming into a college environment where the expectation is, okay, you have to also now interact with these other technologies. They're not familiar with that. So they're struggling, even though they might have done Canvas in high school, they're coming to college and maybe we have Blackboard, and maybe those are two different things, even though the principle's the same. They're struggling with that, emails, um, organizing their time. So kind of like she said, just going back to the basics of what I would have
Mhm.
expected a high school student to come into college with is not necessarily there. And so that kind of prolongs your meetings. I used to kind of maybe be able to get a student in and out in 20-minute advising session. No, now it's more like 45 minutes. Um, or, they're not, the communication's different. So maybe we're communicating, they might stop abruptly in the middle of an email chain once they've gotten what they wanted from you. So you're not necessarily sure. So you're having to double back and close the loop on communication. And so it's a lot
Right.
more detail oriented. It's a lot more hand holding, if you will. And it's a lot more, like she mentioned, going back to the basics is what I've experienced.
Yeah, I can again I mean it's the same thing. It's the same thing across the board. I don't know, like students are now they're very reluctant, even though they're in the college environment and they know cognitively, that they're supposed to do certain things, they're supposed to behave. Well, I don't even know. Sometimes I don't even know if it's registering cognitively. Um, they're very relaxed, so there's a like when you come to college, I know back in the day, way back, way back in the day, when I was in school, there was an expectation that when you came to college, you knew you were going to work. You knew it was like it was the next level. It was going to be rigor. Rigor was expected. Um, that's not the same thing, when we're dealing with students. It really isn't, especially like as I look at the different disciplines. There are some disciplines that they know automatically. Our nursing students, yes, they come in and they know because it's extremely competitive. They know they have to maintain a certain GPA, they have to take certain classes. So um, once they get on that trajectory, there's an understanding there. But for other disciplines, it's not the same. It's not the same thought process. It's almost. I was having telling someone it's okay, y'all. I want to say this, and I hope you guys hear what I'm saying. But there's a lack of value. There's a real lack of value right now with in higher ed, and students are more interested in capitalism. They're more interested um, getting up their followers and, being influencers and things like that that they're looking at every day. But when it comes to learning and thinking and problem solving and contributing to a discipline, they're not thinking in those ways the way they were, 20 years ago. It's very different. It's a very different focus. And so it's like as educators in this space, this is how I feel. I'm trying to compete with one, your capitalistic way of thinking, and we want you to be innovative and have all these great ideas and do all these things. But at the same time, um, understanding the learning process and really, contributing to a discipline, which is why you are in this space, it's a little tougher to figure those things out and then help them understand why are you here? What is your real why? Because that is what's going to carry them to graduation.
And if I could piggyback really quick, because she
Of
touched on
course.
that, and I
So
think,
many good pieces, yeah.
yeah, I think we have to think about how, and I know we're going to get to AI, and that's part of it, but how we repackage higher ed, because like Erica said, they're on Instagram, and I have lost students to Instagram. They had like, they're like, I already have 1 million followers why should I stay in school? And that is a hard sell when you're already getting a check from IG that's more than what I make. And I'm like, well, do I need to go work on my following, right? So, but I think we have to as educators, think about how we repurpose and we repackage higher the value, like you said, of higher education to this generation, because it's no longer you go because your parent went, you went because it's expected of you, you go because you're a person of color and education is valued in our community. It like you said, it has to make dollars and cents. And one thing I was going to say is, one thing I've noticed with this group of students is, because they were home so much during COVID, they seem to know more about their parents finances, financial situation, than maybe I did when I was growing up. And so they come to
Mm.
college with that stress and burden of, I have to make this amount of money because I have to help my parents. I have to make this amount of money because this is going on back at home. And so they seem to be very tuned into that, which only contributes more to stress and mental health, and them having breakdowns and things like that. And so that's one thing I have noticed, that since COVID, they seem to be much more, because they were there, they seem to be much more tuned in to the happenings of home, which is causing, mental stress for students.
Yeah, I would agree with that as well. I've certainly seen that in some of the conversations that we've seen come through with Anna. Um, and I'm glad that you mentioned that piece at the end there, because um, I've also seen uh the whole move towards, people wanting to, as Erica mentioned, participate in the capitalist society right away. In particular, in my own family, where I've kind of had to be the the bearer of the bad news in some ways, to say, look, if we're talking about social media, for example, only 5% of the people that actually are logged on to social media actually make money from it, right? And, what we want to do is provide you something that is lasting, something that can give you the opportunity to continue to better, your opportunities in life and better your careers and those types of things. And so that's what I've tried to share to some of my uh, younger family members. I don't know if it actually works or not, but that's the big thing that I've wanted to share, is that, I get that it looks like there's a quick way to kind of get to where you want to be, but really it's putting in the work and putting in the effort to be able to get there. Um, I also recognize that given all of these unique challenges, that's probably a big part of why students are looking to have a quicker route to success, right? The mental health challenges that we all know about, the financial stresses that are taking place, and all those are burden for you all as well, because you're in a lot of cases on the front lines, having to support these students. So I'd be really interested to hear, what are some of the ways in which you have been able to leverage different AI tools. Obviously, or I guess full disclosure, both A&T as well as Fayetteville State uses Anna, but I would love to hear about all of the different ways in which you've been able to utilize today's tools and technologies to be able to support students, and maybe take a little bit of some of that pressure off of you to support so many students in so many new ways, all at the same time that you're trying to also move forward with what needs to be done for them to graduate on time. And we'll start first with Erica this time, if you want to jump in.
Okay. So one of the things, yes, we do utilize Anna, and Anna has worked really well for us. I think one change that we made that seems to be really working well is we have incorporated our student affairs in our process, right? So in our escalation process. And so because I was receiving several messages, like escalation messages, as it relates to things like risk of harm and things. So what we did was we worked with our counseling and personal development center, so that they are the ones who receive those types of messages. And that
Gotcha.
way it's a quicker response. So I think that was a really great change. We also have a caseworker in student affairs that handles certain types of student escalations. So that spreads out the workload a little bit, throughout the campus. So we're all just kind of engaged in what's happening with Anna. And I think I like that a lot because one, it makes my job a little easier. And I always like when things are a little bit easier for me, but also it just helps to break down some of those silos so that really, um, as a university, we do understand student affairs and academic affairs can work together despite, yes, we can do it. Um, Also, AI tools work really well in the classroom to some extent. So when they're used correctly in the classroom, things like editing and revising, AI tools work great for that. Narrowing topics for research or writing. So a lot of the students, as we said, they're coming in and there's a lack of understanding sometimes with how to get to a topic or what to write. So it can be very, very helpful in helping to narrow down topics for, especially those first 2 semesters of English, or figuring out a research topic, writing emails. So as Amy talked about, we also have an assignment about writing a professional email. So students can, throw that into chat GPT or something, whatever tool they're using, just to see the correct way to write something, and just give them a little more help because they're used to writing in text language, their way. So that gives them a different look, and that can also be helpful. Locating an advisor, like you talked about, Melvin, because we really do push our advisors. Amy, we advisors are extremely important. They're like
Yeah.
they're so important, and so we're constantly promoting for students to meet with their advisors, talk with their advisors. So we get a lot of questions. As it relates to advisors and where they are. And, so that is very helpful. Another area is on the personal success side, so social emotional issues. Sometimes students just say, you know what, I'm not having a great day, you know. And I think that's something that is good because they don't always feel comfortable expressing that to a person. So if they can say that in a quick text, or if they get something from Anna and and the answer is, put a 1 if you're feeling this way, or from 1 to 10, where are you? Then they're more likely to give a number or express something like that than if I'm saying, hey, how's everybody doing? Class is going to be silent, But if they see that, then and if they're really feeling honest and they answer it, then Anna can kind of go through a little bit more with them, asking a little more having more conversation. So I think those things are really, really have been very positive for us on at FSU.
That's great. That's definitely really good to hear there for sure. Some of those key themes that you mentioned are a big part of why we wanted to create a tool like Anna. When I was in college, also many many moons ago, there weren't necessarily so, again, growing up in South Georgia, going to this college that where, it was a big deal that I was going off to college, but when I got there, it felt like everyone else already knew what was going on, and I didn't want to be the one guy, the one person who didn't understand what was happening, right? And so, so a big part of that experience for me was if someone did ask that question to everybody, how's everyone feeling? I would think, oh, if I said how I was really feeling, they would say, oh, that's because he's from South Georgia. He doesn't, he doesn't know, they don't know much down there. And so, that was the kind of, intimidation that I felt, right? And so by giving people the option to just put in that one, right? To just kind of dip their toe in and say, I'm not necessarily feeling okay today, or I don't, I need a little bit of help. It creates that feedback loop where, oh, now I'm getting a response. That wasn't too hard. That wasn't too bad. Let me continue on and see what happens. And hopefully that's a way to also take some of the pressure off of the work that you all are having to do as well. Amy, I'd love to hear how some of the tools are supporting your students as well. I also was thinking a lot about how some of those tools, like you know, helping students get started with their writing assignments, convert convert texting language to, you know, academic language, is a good starter, as well. So I just love to hear, some of the ways in which you've seen AI tools help support your students.
Yeah, I think much of what Erica says the same. In the writing prompts, emails, but also even resumes. We have some resume assignments of helping
Mm,
students kind of create their resumes and prepare for jobs and internships. I think one of our issues that we've had is, used to be you could hang up a flyer or email, and that was good enough communication for a student. So trying to figure out the different ways to communicate with students. And so one thing we've been able to use Honor for us to communicate important dates. So when does advising start? When does registration start? When's the last day to withdraw? And so that has been crucial in communicating with students in different ways because they may or may not check their email. Definitely the flyer seems to be out the window at this point. So kind of figuring out ways to do that. Um, One thing that was also important for us is how do we support our distance learning population? And so, they're not on campus to come into your office necessarily, and they might not want to pick up the phone, or if they're working adults and have children or other obligations, their working hours are your working hours. And so having that tool that's around the clock 24/7, and that even if it's an escalation, even if I'm not seeing it at that moment, I see it the next day, and me and the people on the team that help with escalations, we're able to handle that. And so and I think that's another good important thing because many students are doing their work and interacting well after we get off work. So,
yeah.
they're up at 2 in the morning doing homework. They might be having those intrusive thoughts like Erica talked about of harm or suicidal late at night, and want to communicate or share that, and like you mentioned might not necessarily want to share it with a professor or even their advisor because they're thinking this person has an expectation or has a perception of me that I want to keep intact, and so I don't want to share my deepest darkest thoughts. And so having that kind of intermediary in honor there is really really a great tool. And so I've seen that be beneficial. But even on a staff side, really quick, because many of us are short staffed, to be honest,
Right.
across the state and the nation. And so having a tool there that kind of provides extra help, in our times is great. And so we've been able to use Anna to do that. We've had AI in some of our other tools. I also work with our early alert system, and we've been able to use AI to kind of we're piloting automating some reports in that way. And so just when you're dealing with either a large caseload of students or just the many hats, because we are short staffed, many of us wear many hats. We have multiple titles, we're doing multiple things. Any way where we can get something automated or a little bit of a shortcut or some extra support or help is beneficial. Still having human support. I want to stress that because I was one of the people that was like, I don't know about AI, but marrying the two together, as long as that's there, I think that's beneficial for students.
Absolutely. That last piece is a big part of why we wanted to even have this title here, right? Because I think a lot of times people do tend to think about AI as specifically replacing the human component, and that's at least in our experience, not beneficial for students. In fact, Erica, we were talking about the escalations earlier. How we came about with the escalation piece was specifically that our whole team, we were having an in-person offsite in Durham, North Carolina, and a student came in presenting potential self-harm, and fortunately, one of our support team members who wasn't able to be in person in Durham, uh, caught the message, was able to get that in front of the administrator, who was able to get emergency personnel to the home and stop something that could have been irreparable. Uh, Relying solely on, an AI tool to do something like that could certainly be harmful. And so we want to make sure that there is that balance, right? That you have the human support as well as technology, so that you can be there that's responsive for students, but also that you can have someone that's there. Last thing I'll just share about that is that on average, since COVID, we've seen 9 such escalations on average per campus per year. So it's definitely something that hasn't um, waned. It's, if anything, it's increasing over the course of time. And we want to make sure that we're creating those levels of support as well. But I'd love to hear from you, Erica. As we're thinking about how these tools are being added, there's so many things that are happening so quickly, right? There's new names. I was trying to I actually just forgot the name of the most recent one that has been in the news. Um, that was from overseas, but there's so many of these tools that are coming up over and over again. Um, how do you uh, stay on top of all of these things, making sure that they're being used in the right way for your students, and that there aren't potential negative uses, plagiarism and things like that that are taking place with these tools?
Melvin, Amy, audience, it is the wild, wild west out there. Okay. It is bananas. Um, one thing, so, and I'm saying that, and it's funny when I say it, but it's wild right now. And so when I was saying earlier about how in education, the value is very different than what it used to be. I think that is why education is always behind, right? So we're always like, technology is changing every day. Like you said, so it's honestly, I feel like I can't keep up with it like that. I can't. I don't have time to try to keep up with the next latest, greatest, newest, whatever. But one thing at Fayetteville State that I just recently found out, but develop we're developing an office. I think they started last semester in the fall, but it is an office just simply for that type of thing, to look at those things and to find AI support that can be vetted by the university, that is safe. It has a parameter, because we have to, I mean, we can't just utilize everything. There has to be some safety measures, some parameters. In addition to that, I would, so I can't necessarily do it myself, but I would like to see students begin to like receive some training on it, not just out here just slinging guns. Like I said, like, just shooting and getting, but looking at AI as a support, not a solution.
Right.
Because that's like the thing, like we were talking about the instantaneous, thing that they want. So they want a quick solution, but not really seeing it as an aid. Like it is a support, not, your go-to, not the thing that you use to get the answer. So those are just, just some ways that yeah, that I'm looking at it, but I'll let Amy jump in.
Oh, I think you're right, Erica. It's and I can't control what students do. So it is about what you said, almost getting them to see value in the process of learning and critical thinking, and then they will engage with that process more and use it correctly versus just a quick fix. Now, the other piece that has been helpful on our campus is having a good relationship with IT and our technology support office, because they do have constant trainings on how to incorporate AI and the different trends and how to avoid, phishing and scams and different things that might pop up as a use of the result, how to spot, when students are using it inappropriately. But at the end of the day, like you said, when you're working with a lot of students, you're not going to catch everything. And so I think it does go back to, building value, letting them see the value in their education. And but we have a really good support office with our technology services and then our IT. So I do want to give them a shout out because they are always sending things out, sending invitations, sending alerts, right, letting you know. And but it is hard to catch, and then even having students, and when they have their assignments, I'm thinking more on the tutoring side now, when they have assignments from their faculty, and some faculty have gotten very generous with incorporating AI. Like you can use AI on this assignment, but a lot
Mm.
of faculty still are not on board with that. So I think that also becomes having a partnership with your faculty and figuring out, okay, what are the ways that we want to use this in the classroom? What's appropriate? What's not appropriate? Are there certain assignments we want to regulate this to? And then having that conversation and keeping those lines of communication open.
I agree. And I will add to that, that's the reason why this new office is being developed because there's so much um, disparity with the faculty and how
Right.
it's to be used. I mean, you got some, I have some that are like, absolutely not. You can't even use Word to edit your papers. No, you can't use anything. And then some are like, it's not bad. Let's go with the time. So everybody is different in how they're looking at it. And I think that is also the confusing part for students because they don't know which way to go. They're like, all over the place. I'm interested though, Amy, to know on campus, are the students being trained on the utilization of AI or is it just the faculty? Because our students are not.
That's a good, not to my knowledge. Now there might be something out there I don't know, so I don't want to speak out of turn, but to my knowledge, no. Well, let me dial that back. Our student athletes are very the director of our student athletes academic advising, she is very intentional about training students on latest technologies. And I that is something we definitely need to adopt. And there has been conversation about incorporating that into enrollment when the students come over the orientation. When students come during orientation, like these are our different technologies inclusive of AI. This is how our expectation around how you use it. This is how you use it. And in our classroom, we've done some things around the technology, but we need to expand that, include AI. So to your point, I think there's in pockets, but I don't think that there's a standardized way yet. And our provost is really good. She encourages the use of AI, but like you said, I think that we need to be more intentional about like creating a training for students or something that they could go through. And there might be something that I just am not aware of, but I have not seen something specific to that students have, you're required to go through this training to prepare you for using AI in the classroom, which I think would be a good idea.
Yeah, yeah, definitely second that. I think that would definitely be really helpful, especially as students are going to different classes and you not wanting to run afoul of one course curriculum instruction versus another one there. Um, I also see that we have a question from the audience. I see a couple of hands raised as well. I don't think that audience has speaking capabilities with this Zoom session. So if you want to just write them in the Q&A, we can make sure that we get to those as well. But I do want to address one of the questions here that says from Lewis McIntyre. It says, "What has been your experience with community college transfer students and their willingness to be engaged, and also their willingness to seek support that is available from your student services department?" And I'll let, whoever wants to jump in on that one, go ahead and take that.
So, Lewis, that is a very good question, and it's actually not something that I've tracked. Now, we do work very well, very closely with, we have a department, adult transfer and military, separate department that works very closely with with student success, but I've not tracked our community college students once they're coming into Fayetteville State, um, how they adapt to what we have going on and the use of AI. So that's a very good question, and I will present it to them. Thank you for that.
Yeah, really good question.
Yeah, also that I'm not tracking community college specifically, but transfer. We do have a transfer advisor with a transfer organization, honor society that works with those students specifically. I don't know if she's necessarily tracking which one transfer over from come over from community college versus 4 year. So that's a question I would have to bring up. But in our office, we do have, like I said, a specific transfer advisor, and we have our transfer honor society. So we are intentional about trying to do things for students that are coming over from our 2 year and transferring from our 4 year colleges to make sure that they have community and that they feel engaged on campus. Now, as it relates to AI per se, I'm not exactly sure. That's a great question to take back to the team. I'll definitely do that. But we have in more recent years, especially in North Carolina, I think our focus has been to try to increase our transfer populations at our various schools. And so as that has increased, we see more, I've seen on A&T's campus, more resources and more student orgs and more even faculty be dedicated to supporting that population.
I can also jump in with what we've seen on the honest side. So what has happened in a few cases, quite a few cases, has been that we've actually seen messages from students who were using ANA at a community college, had transferred to a 4-year university, and was asking for continued help and support with how to navigate being a new student on a campus where the other students aren't new students. And so we've certainly seen that come up quite a few times as well, and that's been, just where we've kind of gone back to the basics with providing that level of support for them, and doing some of those same things that I know that you all are already doing, just making sure they know who you are, knowing where they can go to be able to get that access and that help as well. So I know that we're getting close to the top of the hour. One last thing that I just wanted to ask you both, is that we had a pretty good amount of audience joining and participation here, and I know that this is a big question that's for everyone that's here. And so as we're leaving the audience, I'd love to just know what are some of the takeaways that you would provide to the audience here as they're thinking about how to navigate, you know, the 2025 calendar year, all these things taking place, all these students who are needing this additional help. What are some just final takeaways that you would leave for the audience here today?
My final takeaway would be to continue to encourage students to understand that AI is a support, not the solution.
I really love that line, by the way. I might have to steal that one.
Yeah, and I would just say, as administrators and people at institution, to continue the human side of the support with the AI, and figure out how to use it to support staff as well as students. But
Mm,
let's never, 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 never downplay or neglect the human side because, like you said, AI cannot provide that personal touch, especially with the population of students that we're dealing with. That is still critical. And so marrying the two together, I think, is critical.
absolutely, absolutely. Well, thank you both, Erica, Amy, for your time today. This has been very enlightening. Um, Lots of really good nuggets of wisdom here. So I really appreciate the time that you all have provided today for the audience here. Certainly, yep, as the people are saying in the chat here, such a great conversation here. Um, we are also going to share with everyone afterwards, one, the recording, but also just some of the insights that we were sharing earlier in our slides about what we've learned from some of our HBCU student conversations that will hopefully help to support you all as well as you continue to navigate students throughout this 2025 calendar year. But um, other than that, just want to say thank you all to the audience for your great participation and staying with us and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye bye.